about our public education schools. And there has been a consistent strategy to demonize and defund the great equalizer in our society known as public education. This bill seems to create a double standard, though. All the programs and strategies that traditionally uplift minority students seem to be under attack. Stay with me. Senator, it seems that in your bill language, you equate DEI with discrimination. I ask this every time a DEI bill comes up, and I'll ask it again. Not to insult your intelligence, but do you know what DEI actually is?
Yes, I mean, obviously there's many different subjective references to what an individual feels that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts actually provide, but I understand the nomenclature: diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So do you understand it to mean that DEI is a framework for building institutions where everyone belongs and is able to thrive while addressing systematic barriers that have historically excluded marginalized communities? The ACLU. Do you understand it to be that?
I don't agree that it accomplishes that, but I understand the point that you're making.
Hold on, before we go. We got time, brother. Do you understand that it's the ACLU? Would you like for me to read it again? DEI is the framework for building institutions where everyone belongs and is able to thrive while addressing systematic barriers that have historically excluded marginalized communities. That's what the definition of DEI is. Do you understand it to be that?
I understand the ACLU's definition, yes.
Okay. Senator, are you aware that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act already prevents hiring on the basis of race, ethnicity, or gender?
Those are the intended goals of the act, yes.
Senator, are you aware that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act already prevents hiring on the basis of race, ethnicity, or gender?
In an ideal world, yes, that's what Title VII is supposed to accomplish, yes.
Since there is already a federal law on the books, why do we even need this state law?
Why do we need this bill today?
Why do we need this state law? Since there's already federal law on the books, why do we need this state law?
Well, conversely, Senator Miles, I could say if we have Title VII, why do we need DEI units?
Conversely, again, I'm going to read you the definition.
Thank you.
Of DEI. It is the framework, Senator Creighton, for the building of institutions where everyone belongs and is able to thrive while addressing systematic barriers. Systematic barriers has been built over years and that have historically excluded marginalized communities. And if Title VII is there already in the Civil Rights Act, it prevents hiring on the basis of race and ethnicity for genders. That's the federal law. So tell me in simple words, why do you think we need this state law? Please, sir.
Senator Miles, study after study shows that DEI is not working and achieving its intended outcomes. At the same time, there are...
So I will go back to my previous statement. You believe DEI is a means of discrimination?
There have been absolute concrete examples of discrimination with DEI units, yes.
So you believe, simple yes or no, you believe really that DEI is discrimination?
Well, yes, just
That's
as
how
we
you do
talked
it.
about in Senate Bill 17 2 years ago. For instance, A&M had excluded all Asian Americans from DEI strategies. Texas Tech professors were being terminated for pledging to treat every student equally. There was incredible examples of division among vulnerable minority populations on campus with these DEI efforts. And now we have assistant superintendents across Texas in public schools making up to $283,000 a year to foster the same type of policies that take us backwards.
I think there lies the rooted problem that you're terminating DEI as a racist tool. But we'll get back to that, Senator. Senator, this law isn't just going to affect teachers. Is that correct? It's going to affect students just as badly. Would you agree? In this bill?
This bill affects...
It's not going to just affect teachers, but students will be affected as well.
This bill affects all of those that attend or work at a public school, K through 12 in Texas.
That attend and work at public schools. So, and students attend public schools. So this bill, in your agreement, is going to affect students as well. As a matter of fact, they're going to get the worst of the blunt. Because I want to walk with you and talk with you about a few scenarios that can and will happen in schools if this bill passes. Will you allow me to do that, Senator Creighton? Can you walk with me, brother?
I will.
Okay. Senator, are you aware that black students make up about 13% of all public schools? 13%?
I'm aware.
In the state of Texas? You aware of that?
I thought that percentage was a little bit higher, but I'm with you.
This is about 691,000 students. Are you also aware that last school year, only 47,000 teachers of the total 381,000 teachers in Texas were African American? You stand with me on that one?
I stand with you on that one.
Okay. So if we do the quick math, that means there's about one African American teacher for about every 15 African American students in the state of Texas. We still there?
Yes.
Okay. By contrast, there are about 204,000 white teachers and about 114,000 Hispanic teachers. Odds are, if you're going to have a school in which the culture of the teacher probably will not match the culture of the students. This bill, though, does not allow for training that references race, color, or ethnicity. Is that correct? That's part of this bill. It won't allow for any training. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If the numbers show that this disparity is that bad, Senator Creighton, shouldn't we be passing policies that would help the cultural competence and address obvious instead of purposely burying our heads in the sand? Because the numbers show that you're not going to get teachers that's going to be teaching, they're off. So shouldn't we be working to pass policies to help with the cultural competency? Wouldn't that make a little sense? Because, as I always say on the Senate floor, the strength of Texas is in its diversity. Would you agree we should be maybe doing some training for that?
No, I don't believe.
I know that's not what your bill does, but
Right.
I'm just asking you.
Separate from a public school environment, that would be
Separate from a
that
public
would be
school
just fine, Senator Miles. And any of these organizations that these teachers choose to pay $500 to $1,000 a year in dues, they can organize conferences where they can choose to meet, but it can't be tied to tax money related to the funding of these schools, and it can't be fostering these DEI efforts on campus. We've seen many examples of mid-sized and large districts spending a substantial amount of resources to promote DEI on campus as an ideology that simply focuses on all the things that make us different, like race and ethnicity and sexual orientation, instead of focusing on what unites us in creating equal, not different or separate, but equal opportunities together.
Well, you're probably right there, because when that was found, you could also find if you have a group of teachers that are different from the culture that their students are, that it harms the students and it harms in training those teachers, but it would not harm to train those teachers and how best to interact with those students in that culture. That's probably why you were finding so many money being spent training those people, because they were trying to be preventive, because it would help the students learn. And shouldn't we aim to reach students where they are instead of forcing students to conform to what the state believes they should be as a student?
I don't believe.
Would you agree with me with that statement?
I don't.
You don't agree?
I don't believe that the outcomes will be equal to the results of what you're implying. We have study after study after study that shows that common diversity or implicit bias trainings for educators yield little long-term change in attitudes or behavior, and that reviews of dozens of these experiments and studies show such sessions often only boost short-term awareness with no lasting effect on actual behavior at all. So all of these multiple studies across the nation that have been conducted and triple confirmed and verified by other entities and validated over the last 10 years show that as noble as using the nomenclature diversity, equity, and inclusion may be, the outcomes are absolutely not what was an intended consequence of creating these units.
I'm sure as many studies as you can find to prove your point, I can find just as many to prove my point. So we'll leave that there. How about that?
I'm really confident in the studies I'm using, Senator Miles.
We would not have started, there would not have been a DEI process, and we all should be able to agree that culturally, if you have a teacher in the classroom that can relate to the culture of the kids that they're teaching, that kids do better. That's simple. That's common sense. But shouldn't we aim to reach students where they are instead of
common
trying
sense,
to force?
but not the outcome.
I'm answering the question, brother. It's your bill. Respect. Should we aim to reach the students where they are instead of forcing those students to conform to what students of the state of Texas believes should the students be? Shouldn't we be reaching out to reach those students where they are instead of conforming to what we think they should be?
Senator Miles, there's nothing about this legislation that keeps all teachers of any race from continuing to teach all students of any race. There's nothing about this legislation that prevents it.
And I didn't say there was, Senator. I'm asking you, should we not?
I misunderstood your last 10 minutes then. I'm thinking that you're saying that something about this bill keeps teachers from being able to teach students that are of similar cultures or race in these classrooms, and this bill doesn't change that.
Okay, then let me ask you this. Isn't this bill about keeping our kids safe and included? This bill is about keeping our kids safe and included. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that without the DEI units, we will have a more inclusive environment fostered on campus. Yes, I believe that. I know you and I disagree on that.
Okay, isn't that what this bill is about? It's keeping our kids safe and inclusive campus? Is that right?
This bill is about parental rights and education and their expectations being breached by people like you and I that hold elective office and think that as we put power, control, institutions, government, and politics ahead of parents, we know what's best. And at the end of the day, our moms and dads and our grandmothers and grandfathers and guardians know what's best. So our legislative agenda this session with this bill and many other bills will be to reaffirm that and make sure that Texas leads the nation with a model that stands up for kids, not institutions.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you and Senator West debate that particular area of this bill, because I think this bill has some other meaning in it as well. But let's move on. I'm going to also let you know that I fear that students' achievements will be affected by this bill, Senator Creighton. When a child does not feel safe or expect in their schools that they can learn to their highest learning potential. If we start seeing a widening achievement gaps along minority lines and underserved students with this bill after removal of DEI, what's the state of Texas plan to do after that, Senator Creighton? With this bill, when we start to see a widening gap of achievement and for underserved students, what's the state of Texas going to do after that? Do we have a plan?
Yeah, this bill will...
Do we have a plan?
This bill will absolutely
Do we have a plan, Senator Creighton?
I tell you what, Senator Miles, you tell me full stop when you're finished, and I'll know where I will go. Yeah, absolutely, we have a plan. We have an entire legislative agenda this session set up, designed to increase student outcomes, and consequently, nothing in this legislation that is race-neutral policies to address how our campuses are managed will affect that.
But if possible that it does, when it does the state of Texas have a plan for those marginalized students at that time?
Senator Miles, I don't believe or concede that this bill in any way, shape, or form will reduce student outcomes for our public school students. In fact, I believe this bill will bring our public school students together in a way that is not fostered and offered through DEI units separating students, in a way that's absolutely exclusive in what we're seeing through all of these national studies and what absolutely happened as irrefutable fact on our higher education campuses. So I believe everyone will be more united. I believe everyone will be more aligned. They will find common ground instead of being encouraged to be separated from one another and suspicious and skeptical of one another and constantly working in a way that excludes one another. And outcomes in this environment following the removal of these DEI units will increase because of that. That is culture, that is harmony, that is bringing people together, race neutral, and that is what equal opportunity and equal treatment should be all about.
And Senator Creighton, all I'm asking that is, if standardized test scores, graduation rates, or college acceptance rates decline for certain groups, will the state of Texas consider reintroducing some form of equity initiative? That's all I'm asking.
We're not focused on equity initiatives. We're focused on equal opportunities for all of our students and providing the supports for each and every one of our individual students, regardless of what they look like or what their family's bank account is like or what their specific challenges are. And our legislative agenda in the Senate Education K through 16 Committee this session has an incredible national model legislative agenda to provide those exact types of supports, not just for our students, but for our teachers, and ultimately historic funding for our schools. So you and I and all the members on this floor will continue to work together to address any student outcome needs.
So I'm going to assume the answer to my question is no. So let's move on. As part of this bill, it states that schools can have student clubs based on race, sex, color, ethnicity, but the sponsor, teacher, cannot provide any instructions or on any topic in that capacity. They can only be there in a supervisory position. Is that correct?
That's correct. For certain clubs on campus, that's exactly correct.
So what does that mean? If there was a black student carpentry club at a high school, an all-black high school has a student carpentry club, does that mean that the shop teacher cannot teach the students the safety of how to use the tools?
Yeah, let me explain
Can I just get an answer to the question? If I'm at a school in my neighborhood and we have a carpentry class, can the teacher express to us, since they're supposed to be just in a supervisory role, can that carpentry teacher show us how to use the tools? Because your bill reads he's just there in a sponsorship position.
Yes, and my answer was, let me explain how my bill deals with sponsors and clubs. And then your answer was, that's not good enough. So if you want to provide my answers for me, I need your staff to bring those to my staff. If you want me to provide my answers to you from the heart, then let me run as soon as you say full stop, and I'll provide you that same courtesy. Deal?
I don't, not almost, yeah, deal, but I know where your heart is, but I know what this bill says too.
I'm covering the bill.
So my question was, I know where your heart is, but I know what this bill says too, and
I'm
that's
covering the bill.
I'm pertaining to what's in this bill. What your heart is, and your bill is two different places. So let me ask a question.
Members. Senator Miles, you have the floor to ask questions. Senator Creighton, answer the questions upon the completion of Senator Miles' completing of the question. Thank you, members.
So if I can restate the question, and not where I want to go where what the bill says, not where your heart is, brother. My question is, if there is a carpentry club at an inner city school, can the person teach us how to use the tools? Because in your bill, not in your heart, it says that they're there in a supervisory position.
Under your example, if other students are excluded from that club, you could have a sponsor or a teacher supervise but not provide instruction. If that club was designed to allow inclusivity, because the club you described is exclusive of others. If you truly want inclusivity, Senator Miles, then you would be okay under the bill to have a sponsor with no instruction on restrictions. So do you want a club that's exclusive? But how could you be for DEI? Or do you want a club that's inclusive that has a teacher that provides instruction for all? Which is it? Full stop.
Senator Creighton, the exclusive and inclusive at a school in my community, it's going to be inclusive of all possibly the same race. I saw where you were trying to go, but stay with me. My question just asked, if I'm at an African-American school in Houston, Texas, Jack Yates, my alma mater, if I'm at Jack Yates where it's all black, pertaining to your bill, and we have a carpentry club, can the person that just claimed in your bill the supervisor's position, can he, all I'm asking, can he teach us how to use the tools? That's simple. Just yes or no.
Senator Miles, under your hypothetical, you don't have to describe a club that is only for black students in carpentry, because if your entire
But that's all we got. I'm just
man, I can't believe that the one-way street you're asking me to drive down right now. You've got to full stop and let me give you an answer, or we don't need to be here. We're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, you are, because I'm just simply asking. Can he teach us how to use the carpentry equipment? That's all I'm asking.
And I repeated your hypothetical. If your school is all African American, you don't need an all black carpentry club. It is already all African American. Therefore, the sponsor
Okay,
of the bill
so can the person that's got the club, can he teach us how to use the tools, Senator Creighton? If they're in the club, can he teach us how to use the tools?
If it's
Yes or no?
if it's a carpentry club, yes.
Okay, so he can teach us how to use the tools.
But that's not what you said. You said a club for black students in carpentry.
Okay, take out.
Well, let me tell you on this floor, your rhetoric matters.
If we have a guitar club, can they teach us how to pick the guitar?
Yes.
Thank you.
Because it's for all students, right?
All the students are there.
Okay,
yeah.
now we're on a different hypothetical, so my answer is yes.
Can he teach us how to pick the guitar?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If under this legislation, the teacher exists simply to be a sponsor, what purpose does the club itself serve? Wouldn't it just be easier at that point to just hang out together at someone's house after school? If they're just a sponsor.
Well, Senator Miles, we know that there's...
Your bill specifically says, I'm sorry, I wasn't finished. My fault. Because the bill specifically states that person is just there in a sponsor role. They're not there to give any instructions. They're just there in a sponsor role, correct?
Here I go, okay? Here's my answer. There are clubs where teachers can provide instruction with no restriction. There are clubs that are allowed where teachers are supervisory as a sponsor. As you just mentioned, the answer to your question is, in that example, kids need sponsors. Kids need students on a high school campus or a K-12 campus. They need supervision. These are taxpayer-funded assets, right? These are environments where kids could get rowdy and get hurt. So yes, a supervisory role would absolutely allow these students to get together, but it would also keep order, because you know what? Not all the time students in the same organization or club get along.
So no instructional, just supervise. So I can be clear.
No restrictions for a sponsor or a teacher on a Democrat or Republican club, a chess club, a carpentry club, a math club. There would be, no clubs allowed that are specifically for sexual orientation or gender identity as the base or the root cause of the organization of that club, but those students could join other clubs. They could also get together and meet off campus without a sponsor or a supervising teacher. It depends in the bill exactly what club you're talking about, and that's why I'm being nuanced.
So let's close this section out like this. Simple yes or no question. Sir Creighton, is this bill an attempt to make it impossible to have racially and culturally based clubs at public schools?
The clubs that are allowed in this bill, Senator Miles, allow all races to join.
Right. So, again, is it an attempt to make it impossible to have a racially and culturally based club at public schools?
Under this bill, you could have a Black Students Association club at Aldine High School.
You can?
But instruction would just be not allowed. You could just have a supervisor to make sure students were in order and stayed safe.
Gotcha. I understand. So we can have a Black student body club, or you just don't want the teacher to give any education or any history or to instruct in any way. Is that correct? That's how you want that?
Yes, that's what I was trying to
There we
explain.
go.
That's what I was trying to explain 15 minutes ago when you cut me off 5 times.
So,
but yes,
you know,
that's true. Yeah.
I'm a little boy from public inner city school.
You and I both. I'm a little kid
So-
from Cut and Shoot, Texas. So
What do you tell the students? I'm not going to readdress that. Let's close out, Senator Creighton. We have addressed hiring, and we have addressed what this bill would do to student clubs. But this legislation goes further and creates a formal grievance procedure related to DEI. Is that correct? So now we're filing grievances. Is that correct?
that's correct. There's enforcement in the bill. That's correct.
You call it enforcement, but in the bill it's called grievance, correct?
That's right. Those are both accurate. Yeah.
So, Senator, let me ask you a question. Can you name me an instance that would be a grievance worthy under this bill where DEI initiatives in Texas K through 12 schools have resulted in measurable harm to a student or educator? Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. Can you name me an instance that would be a grievance worthy under this bill in DEI in a K through 12 school in Texas that has resulted in measurable harm to a student or an educator? Have there been any complaints? Have there been anything that a complaint should have been filed that you know of?
Just as an example, Senator Miles, we have Richardson ISD's Executive Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion offering a case-by-case scenario when it comes to allowing boys to room with girls on school-sponsored events. So my question back to you would be, when I give you these examples, what will you then in turn say? The bill is okay?
I think that's stupidity on that individual's part, but that's stupidity on any adult's part to have children rooming together and one's male, one's female. So I don't see that being an example of a DEI initiated problem. That's stupidity on that individual's part at Richardson School. I'm going to repeat the question again. Can you give me a grievance worthy under this bill where DEI initiatives in K through 12 schools have resulted in measurable harm to a student or an educator, not stupidity?
Senator Miles, I'd love to just stay with my example that I just gave.
Okay, so the answer to my question is no, you can't.
The answer to your question is
the answer to my question is no, you cannot give me an answer.
Members, Senator Miles, please allow Senator Creighton to complete his answer. Then you may ask additional questions. Senator Creighton, you're recognized.
Yes, the example I just gave you was a DEI officer giving advice on a policy that would harm students.
That example is an example of is not an example of a DEI initiative. That example is an example of a student human being.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
It's a student that is transitioning, and the DEI officer for that public school district offered a policy and visited directly with a journalist that was reported where the policy for the school district is that a boy could room with girls on a school-sponsored event. And I can't imagine how you could continue to say that has nothing to do with DEI when it was a nearly $200,000 compensated DEI K through 12 administrator that was talking to the press about how to circumvent our laws so that boys could room with girls.
I'm sure
absolutely on point with your example.
and absolutely on point, that was a stupid individual. That was a not smart individual. If the supposed DEI initiatives are related to hiring off staff, training, or staff training, how would a parent even know? Would you just expect the school to self-report it? Do you understand my question? If the supposed DEI initiatives are related to hiring or staff training, how would the parent even know, and would you expect the school to self-report it?
Yes, there are requirements in the legislation to establish conduct for compliance procedures with the teachers in the school and those that work for the school. There are requirements in the bill for the district to establish a policy under their employment requirements for how this legislation should be followed.
Okay. Last question. Senator Creighton, if a parent can file multiple grievances against teachers for alleged DEI practices, wouldn't this create yet another reason why we lose educators in the state of Texas?
I think those situations happen every day with or without this bill, Senator Miles. I think that parents need a reasonable grievance process to be heard. This bill even goes so far in the unreasonable category of making sure that at the beginning of a public school board meeting, parents can have a short comment period. We have just lost the realm of common sense with regard to our parents and our grandparents and guardians' experiences with public schools. So as we this session offer a liability protection fund for teachers that you voted against, we also provide a grievance process that's very reasonable for parents just to simply be able to access student health records or their curriculum for their student or psychiatric forms and evaluations. And if they don't get what they need on behalf of that student, of course they deserve an opportunity, as all of your constituents deserve an opportunity as well as mine, to be heard.
You know, in closing, Senator Creighton, this is the fourth time that you and I have gone back and forth at length with this whole issue of DEI. Senator, I don't know what this bill is trying to accomplish in K-12 education. What I do know is what it will accomplish, and that's to create an atmosphere where minorities and otherwise forced to conform. You're going to force these kids to conform. And if the achievement gaps for minority students widen, we can look back to this bill as a start. The state has demonized DEI, but I refuse to accept the narrative. Minority students have borne the brunt of this assault, but I hope with the help of this chamber, we can find a future where DEI has a new definition and applies it to all. Determined, educated, and intelligence. That's what DEI should be standing for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Miles.
Thank you, Senator Miles. Senator Campbell, for what purpose?